1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, welcome to Culture Train. I'm Josh.
And I'm Ben.
And we are drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon this evening because we're having a jolly good time.
And they're out of pint cans, so don't worry, we're being excessive.
What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all snuggled in so that you can listen to us talk without interrupting.
Bundle up tight, folks, because you're about to get cultured, and we all know how cold that can make you.
So tonight we watched a movie from 1948, an American comedy horror classic directed by Charles Barton, starring the comedy duo Abbot and Costello. It's Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein.
Frankenstein wasn't in him
Actually,
himself. There was an actor playing Frankenstein.
No, they didn't actually.
Yeah, it's kind of a misnomer.
It was written by Robert Lees, Frederick Rinaldo, and John Grant. Starred Bud Abbott, Lou Costello, Lon Chaney Jr., Bela Lugosi, and Glenn Strange. The music was by Frank Skinner. The cinematography was by Charles Van Enger. It was edited by Frank Gross and distributed by Universal Studios, which is why they had the Wolfman, Dracula, and Frankenstein's monster, because those are
They're universal horror icons.
which is why they made Monster Squad. It was a sequel.
Universally scary.
So all right, so this movie is considered by the AFI to be one of the top 100 greatest comedies of all time, and it still holds up today because we had a great time watching it, and it was funny.
I also piddled my pants once or twice, so...
By piddled, he means crapped.
Yes, well, I was trying to be modest about it, but...
Don't hold back, you made it. You're a man.
Oh, shucks. But yeah, we had a rambunctious fun time with this here film.
So it's it's pretty easy to figure out what this one is. It's Abbott and Costello, the great duo, who's on first, and gave Chris Farley and David Spade all their comedy gold. And they owe everything to these guys. Kevin James owes everything to these guys.
One of the few films
Jack Black owes everything. Everybody owes everything to these guys.
Yeah. Also, one of the few films to introduce the whole idea of just basically telling the story by the title. The film.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Also, one of those movies that puts funny people in scary situations. I don't think we would have Shaun of the Dead without Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. Furious Facts. This film was originally intended to be titled The Brain of Frankenstein, but its name was changed prior to the filming schedule.
You probably wouldn't know why because you haven't even seen the film yet, but because we know why it would have been called that.
We're not going to ruin it for you, but it does have something to do with a brain and Frankenstein. Walter Lantz, who created Woody Woodpecker, provided all the animation for Dracula's transformations in the film.
Which was, by the way, mind-blowing.
My head was exploded.
It was goopy.
Yeah, I was grossed out but happy about it, too.
Yeah.
Apparently, Costello hated the script, and he says, quote, his 5-year-old daughter could have written something better, but then got into it, and it is now a comedy classic, which means his 5-year-old daughter is out of a job.
Yeah, strangely enough, though, she did write a pretty bang-rank script, but it's been just shopped around a lot and hasn't gotten produced yet. So.
I also want to commend you for your use of bangarang in a sentence.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
During the film, Glenn Strange, who plays Frankenstein's monster, found Costello so funny that he would break laughing. And they had to retake this so many times, especially in the scene where Costello sits on the monster's lap. And there were actually several pie fights between takes. But Abbott and Costello respected the monsters. Chaney is the Wolfman, Lugosi is Dracula, and Strange is the monster. And made sure no pies were flung at the made-up actors. Now, that Lon Chaney's the original Wolfman. Is that true? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Bela Lugosi is the original Dracula.
Yes.
Glenn Strange was not the original monster. Boris Karloff was the original Frankenstein's monster, and he was originally approached to play the monster, but he declined. But he did help promote the film and could be seen in several publicity photos, including one where he's buying a ticket, even though he refused to actually see the movie, because he thought it was an insult to horror movies.
Essentially, he started the hipster movement.
There's the scene in the movie, and if you haven't seen this movie, then you should.
Because you'll get cultured.
Yeah, and it's fun. There's a scene in the laboratory where the monster comes after Abbott and Costello and throws this woman through a window. And he throws a woman through a window. There's no trick photography. He just throws her through a window.
Back when domestic violence was cool.
And the actor accidentally stepped on a camera cable, causing the camera to fall and break some bones in his foot. So Lon Chaney, who was not working that day, took over the role of the monster for that one scene. So
What a guy.
He's a nice guy. Did you know that in Australia, the film board required that every scene involving a monster be removed before its release?
Which would result in a super lame film.
Or a funny film about two guys working in a delivery business that never actually did anything.
Correct.
This is the only time that Bela Lugosi reprised his famous Dracula role, which we watched 2 movies ago, actually, in the original Dracula.
If you were cultured, you would have known that.
He had previously portrayed vampires in Mark of the Vampire in 1935, The Return of the Vampire in 1944, and Old Mother Riley Meets the Vampire in 1952, which we have to find that movie.
Yeah, that's a classic.
And then he made a gag cameo in Dracula in the 1933 Hollywood on Parade short, but this was the only time he played Dracula in a sustained film. And finally, on our cavalcade of facts, the very end of the movie, and we're going to ruin it for you. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, suck it.
At the very end of the movie, you should have seen this movie already.
Yeah, come on, grow up.
They're in a boat, they're escaping, and it turns out that they have been riding with the Invisible Man the whole time, voiced by none other than Ralph Vincent Price Helson. So Vincent Price did the cameo in this movie as the Invisible Man, and you can tell right away that it's his voice. But he had appeared in 1940's The Invisible Man Returns, so it was sort of a rehash of that. According to Wikipedia, here are some film mistakes.
Blooper reel.
At one point in the film, Abbott and Costello are going through characters are going through a revolving panel. Costello accidentally calls Abbott by his real name instead of his character's name. And while we were watching the movie, I caught that and was like, "Oh, that's a flub." But I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want anyone to think I was a nerd.
I was too involved in my beer to notice.
Dracula's reflection can be seen in the mirror when he takes his next victim in the film. In previous Universal horror films, notably Lugosi's Dracula and House of Dracula with John Carradine, the undead could be recognized because they cast no reflection. However, this bit had not been established within the context of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, so it was okay.
Do we have to pour one out for John Carradine's name being mentioned?
That's David Carradine you're thinking of.
My mistake.
So, Ben, what'd you think? What'd you think of the movie?
I giggled once, twice, 3, many times.
I think it's interesting that still to this day, that kind of comedy holds up. That the kind of witty repartee between them, between people, that kind of 30s to 40s style of fast banter was widely accepted, and now it's just used as irony, which makes me sad because I miss it and I wish it would come back more, and I will do my part to bring it back.
I think it was interesting, yeah. I mean, we were constantly talking about throughout the film and stuff about how, like, oh, you can totally see where so-and-so got their influence to this or so-and-so. But, yeah, I mean, really throughout it, it's all just like, oh, I wish this type of humor was still in fashion, frankly. I'm such an addict for the vaudeville scene and clearly feel that I was born in the wrong century and wish I could do that as well. So
I mean, but this is, like, also the first time that you had a comedy duo enter into, like, a serious horror movie area where they had to just be themselves, and I mean, like I said, like Shaun of the Dead owes itself to this movie, and there's so many other different scenarios where you have funny people in terrible situations, and I think this is the first time that they had done that, and it made me super happy to see it.
And we're not the only ones. I mean, the Library of Congress has declared this is nomination.
Culturally,
yes,
historically, or aesthetically significant film.
And
in 2001.
Thus it's in the National Film Registry.
That's right. In 2007, Reader's Digest selected this movie as one of the top 100 funniest films of all time. And the 1948 film is recognized by historians as the definitive endpoint to the American golden age of the Monster Mash and the classic Universal monster cycle. So this was the last time that those Universal monsters were in a popular film. So this was the end of that whole thing. It's considered the swan song, as they say, for the big 3 Universal horror monsters. I
will have you know that the top 100 funniest films of all time was only in the Reader's Digest large print edition.
As for the rest of the monsters, you had Dracula, Bela Lugosi, which we talked about in our cover of Dracula. We had Frankenstein, who was played by Glenn Strange, who had not played who had not played Frankenstein's monster previously. Glenn Strange was an American actor who appeared mostly in Western films, but he is best known for playing the Frankenstein monster in 3 Universal films during the 40s, but he was not the original Frankenstein's monster.
And of course, he was also the bartender on Gunsmoke.
In 1942, he appeared in The Mad Monster, and then he was in House of Frankenstein, and then finally in the movie we are talking about. That's how many times Glenn Strange played Frankenstein's monster. And then you've got the Wolfman, Mr. Lon Chaney Jr. himself. His real name is Creighton Tull Chaney, and he was best known for his role as the Wolfman, and also he was the son of the famous silent movie actor Lon Chaney.
He also played Lenny in Mice and Men, so he made me cry as soon as I saw him in this movie.
And that's about it. That's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. It's a bunch of Hollywood greats doing Hollywood great things in a time when Hollywood was great.
See it, you'll giggle, and you'll learn what funny is.
And that about does it for the Culture Train, where we know what funny is, culture is, what old Hollywood is, and what you should be watching right now.
And how much 6 pints of PBR cost at the local corner store.
How much?
About $6.
And times have changed. Come next week to the Culture Train where we watch something even more culturally significant. And what are you doing listening to this when you could be watching a culturally significant
Come on,
movie?
go up. Get an education, you kids. You guys are jokes.
You
Come
got
on.
Netflix, but you're wasting all your time watching leads.
I'm sick of you.